Is there an actual lore reason why most Mandalorians aren't Force sensitive, and those that are generational in talent? Throughout the course of the Star Wars mythos, we've only seen a handful of Mandalorians who were discovered to have been Force sensitive over the course of several hundred years. The most famous by far is the iconic Tar Vizsla, fabricator of the Darksaber, who was closely followed by Grogu, but there are very few other Mandalorians who we have ever seen to have any affinity with the Force. Is it possible that there's an actual tangible reason why this is, and might there actually be evidence for this idea? Well, today, students of the Force will be answering that question and reveal among the Mandalorians why it is exceptionally rare for them to be Force sensitive. The reason this is so important now is Mandalorian Sabine Wren is being trained as a Jedi Padawan under Ahsoka Tano. While it is clear that Sabine does in fact have some affinity with the Force, as the Force flows through all living things, it is stated several times in the series that her aptitude with the Force and skill is extremely low. Nonetheless, she has undertaken Jedi training. But on the case of the character of Sabine, let's go back several years. When Sabine first started training with the lightsaber, it wasn't Ezra's green lightsaber that we saw, but instead, she used the Darksaber and was training under Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus. In order to reclaim the throne of Mandalore, Sabine underwent extensive training with Kanan with the Darksaber, learning the basics of lightsaber combat in order to defeat Gar Saxon. During these sessions, they encountered repeated frustrations with one another, leading Kanan and Hera to converse about the topic, trying to break down and explain why Sabine was having such a hard time opening her mind up to the Force. Hera proposes that Kanan doesn't have faith since Sabine is not Force sensitive, to which Kanan replies with the following: "No, the Force resides in all living things, but you have to be open to it." Sabine is blocked. Her mind is conflicted. He then claims, before going on to finish with, "She's so expressive, and yet so tightly wound. She's so Mandalorian." We know that the Force resides within all things. This has been a pinnacle of the old Star Wars lore and the current lore, but this quote seems to imply that the ability to channel and feel the Force is influenced by the personality of the subject, and again, their openness to it. This is not to say that Sabine does not have the capability to be a powerful Jedi Knight, nor does she necessarily have enough Force sensitivity to be an outright Jedi of the old era, but this is meant to explore the idea that an individual's creativity, artistic nature, and open-mindedness can open them up to the Force itself. Conversely, it also explores the notion that a closed, narrow-minded dogma can stifle the Force. The implication is that individuals who are willing to explore the universe physically, emotionally, and spiritually have a much deeper bond with nature and the galaxy around them, that they are able to awaken their latent Force sensitivity. Not only this, but Kanan even goes as far to claim that the traits which inhibit Force sensitivity are closely associated with the Mandalorians, and we've actually seen evidence of this before outside of Mandalore. For example, let's take the Skywalker twins for instance. They each went the first 19 years of their lives without any indication that they were some of the most powerful Force sensitives in the entire universe, the children of the Jedi Chosen One. Luke was only able to uncover his latent Force sensitivity after training with Obi-Wan, and Leia took even longer to discover her potential. Leia would go on to say that she always knew that there was something different about her, but as far as displaying any sort of Force potential, neither could do so without proper guidance. Looking back at the Jedi themselves, they recruit children specifically based on their potential, whereas Mandalorians do not. And it's entirely possible that several Force sensitives have been taken into the Mandalorian culture without ever knowing that they had this potential. But then this leaves us with an interesting question to dive into. First, if Force sensitivity and an individual's connection with the Force can be affected by dogmatic, narrow-minded principles, then why weren't the modern Jedi affected by this? After all, the Jedi fell into a very stifled view on the outset of the Clone Wars, so if being, quote, can hinder Force sensitivity, so why has this not been shown in Jedi? Well, the fact is that it actually was. We've known for a long time that there have been several Jedi renegades who broke away from the Jedi's political mindset. Qui-Gon Jinn, Quinlan Vos, and even Dooku to a degree found a stronger Force connection by avoiding the political biases and listening to the will of the Force over the desires of a government. Even further than this, Sidious was able to hide his presence in the Force from some of the most powerful Jedi of the era. Many of the Jedi sat on the other end of the room and the very same desk as Chancellor Palpatine without any indication that he was Force sensitive, let alone one of the most powerful Force wielders of the generation. This isn't to say that Sidious didn't cloud the Force, because he very much did. It's only suggested that the problem might have been deeper than we were previously led to believe. But what does this have to do with Mandalorians? Mandalorians seem to have many of the same principles. They are devoted to a very strict ideology that embraces the use of technology over a connection with nature, the very nexus of the Force itself. Their gear is cold, mechanical, and unfeeling, whereas the wisest Jedi find peace and solace in nature, among other life forms that channel the Force. Sabine, however, is already much more creative and open-minded than the average Mandalorian is. We can see this in her sense of artistic expression and her experiences in the galaxy. Most Mandalorians spend their lives with their like-minded tribe, but Sabine has spent her time around some of the greatest pilots, Jedi, Raiders, and Rebels that many Mandalorians do not ever affiliate with. And this has opened up her mind beyond what the average Mandalorian sees. Mandalorian culture is in stark contrast to the culture of the Jedi. They are all about the tribe and are all about attachments. They rely on technology and a warrior culture unlike the Jedi, who are peacekeepers. They are conquerors, and make no mistake, the history between the Mandalorians and the Jedi is extremely shaky. In fact, for thousands of years, the two groups hated one another. The Jedi Council watched as Mandalorians conquered entire sections of the galaxy, and massive wars broke out between the two of them. In fact, in the history, Mandalorians notoriously get along extremely well with the Sith Order, as they share many of their views of conquering and having the strongest rule. All of this is to say, though, that Mandalorians are meant to be tightly wound. They are meant to be extremely disciplined and to follow what they can see and feel. They have been trained to literally cut their minds off from the Force, and because of this, rely solely on their discipline and the will of the tribe. In a sense, what we are proposing is many of the Mandalorians may have had a latent ability to touch the Force within them, but because of the history between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, it was exceptionally rare for a Jedi to recruit Mandalorians, not to mention that it could even be dangerous for the Jedi, as their previous affiliation with the Mandalorian cause caused them to be volatile against the wider order. Tar Vizsla in the end even decided to forego the path of the Jedi as far as we know, and lead Mandalore with the Darksaber. His allegiances always lie with Mandalore above the Jedi Order and above anything else, making them extremely dangerous in the eyes of a Jedi. What this goes to explain is that there is more with the character of Sabine and more to the will of the Force. One's sensitivity to the Force has to do with the personality and desires of the wielder. The light side of the Force reaches those with serenity and peace. The dark side seeks those that want to conquer. But the more modern Mandalorians actually stand staunchly against the ways of the dark side of the Force. The modern Mandalorians were bred for war, but they ultimately desire peace. One thing should not be understated, though. It is extremely rare for a Mandalorian to have any affinity with the Force, as there are simply just some species in Star Wars that hold more of a connection to it than others. The Mandalorians are completely loyal to their community. They are dictated by honor and pride, and for thousands upon thousands of years, the Mandalorian culture has referred to the Jedi as simply enemy sorcerers, those that tap into what they believe to be the unnatural and go against the way of their creed. In the galaxy at this point in time, Mandalorians working in tandem with Jedi is a relatively new thing. And because of that, it's expected that the two cultures will not have the perfect time melding together, even if Sabine is in fact Force sensitive. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on why so few Mandalorians have been inducted into the Jedi Order? And why it seems the Force itself actively dismisses the Mandalorians because of their mindset? As always, my friends and acolytes, thank you so much for visiting the archives, and may the Force be with you.